Ladies and gentlemen, as we begin our services, if we can please kindly turn off all cell phones or electronic devices, or please place them on silent. Thank you.
Es ein Adonai tzilcha al yad yeminecha Yomam hashemesh lo yakeka Bi'areach balayla Adonai yishmorcha mikora Yishmor et nafshecha Adonai yishmor tzetecha uvolecha me'ata v'ad olam. From Psalm 121, I turn my eyes to the mountains, from where will my help come? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way, your guardian will not slumber. See, the guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. Adonai is your guardian. Adonai is your protection at your right hand. By day the sun will not strike you, nor the moon by night. Adonai will guard you from all harm. God will guard your life. Adonai will guard your going and coming, now and forever. Mourning is the price we pay for having the courage to love others. Even in grief, we know that the wonder of human life is too complex and too magnificent to be memorialized in endless pain. The gifts of spirit our loved ones gave us cannot be measured or weighed, nor can they be lost or even tarnished by time. Even in our darkest hours, we know that some of their light and their warmth will always be with us, bringing comfort and courage and, in the fullness of time, healing and peace. Birth is a beginning, and death a destination. And life is a journey from childhood to maturity and youth to age, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength or strength to weakness and often back again. From health to sickness, and back we pray to health again. From offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, and grief to understanding. From fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey, stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning, and death a destination, and life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage to life everlasting. In truth, the many precious sparks of an individual's life are contained within the flowing memories of all those who were touched by him. You each hold this precious man in your hearts and minds in your own unique ways. Death has stilled the heart of Steven Schwartz. We gather here this afternoon to share our sorrow, to thank God for the gift of his life, and to entrust Steve to the gentle stillness of eternity. Today our hearts go out especially to Sharon, his beloved wife of 52 years. We think of Steve's children, Kenny and his wife Sharon, Lisa and her dear friend Dave. Steve was Pa to Ava and Max. He is remembered today also by his sisters, Marilyn and Norma, his brother-in-law and sister-in-law, Mark and Susan, and his nieces and nephews, Paul, Heather, Ryan, Rachel, Lee, Andy, Jay, and Rob. Our condolences also go to Steve's best friend of 56 years, Steve Kravitz, and his wife Annie. I imagine as you all heard the news of Steve's passing, and as you found one another here today, each and every one of you said to yourself, or someone beside you, Steve was such a great guy. The nicest guy you'd ever want to meet. I've been saying exactly that myself. Sweet, kind, generous, modest to a fault, an amazing friend, always seeing the good in others and finding the best in the situation. Steve was full of positivity and genuine, gentle and strong, one who saw the good in everything and everyone. He lived in the moment and always made the best of every situation. A quiet, knowing mensch. Steve Schwartz, to those who knew him best, was always about doing the right thing, never superficial, and always shying away from the spotlight. He did good for the sake of good itself. Principled, strong, and knowing. Steve always gave more of himself than he ever took from any situation or individual. He loved his work, which enabled him to help people and create relationships. He was always available and ready to support his clients and his colleagues who were always seeking him out for advice. The true testament to Steve's value at Fannie Mae came when he retired. Everyone always received, of course, a party at the time of retirement. But our guy, Steve, he was celebrated 3 separate times. Steve was creative and eminently handy with an eye for design and a love of architecture. And what a passion he had for gardening. Years ago, I'm talking many years ago, Steve and Sharon arrived at our home with bags full of clippings from their own amazing gardens. Gardens which I had the pleasure of enjoying, marveling at his knowledge of every perennial, always with an eye for color and great beauty. To this day, each spring, our own yard is a precious reminder of the life and legacy of Steve. Bluebells and goosenecks abound. At this time, I'd like to invite several of Steve's loved ones to join me here today to offer their own thoughts and memories, beginning first with Steve's brother from another mother, Steve Kravitz.
Thank you, Cantor. For those who don't know me, I'm Steve Kravitz. And as the Cantor said, I've known Steve for about 56 years as a result of our wives, Sharon and Annie, being Drexel College roommates and our families being lifelong friends. I never thought of it much, but Steve, also known as Schwartzy, and Schwartz, with an emphasis on the TZ, and more recently, Pa, was more like a brother in addition to being a best friend. I don't think we ever exchanged bad words towards each other in 56 years. That doesn't take into account Steve's occasional use of some bleeping type words when the occasion demanded. It's probably no coincidence that we're both named Steve. In fact, in their dorm room, the girls, as Sharon and Annie were called, we had a sign and it said, "We love our Steves." We were married within 6 months of each other, and Sharon and Steve were married in Highland Park, New Jersey, but their honeymoon plane left from Philadelphia. So we drove them in the snow to the airport in the early hours the day after the wedding, safely. Our lives ran a parallel course. We both started married life in Allison Apartments in Martin, New Jersey. Monthly rent was less than $150 per month. Steve was at Rutgers Law School. Sharon and Annie were finishing their senior year at Drexel and commuting together. Steve made it through law school and passed the New Jersey bar. From this point on, he started a lifelong career of real estate law, first with entry-level companies, then a prestigious Philadelphia law firm, and finally with Fannie Mae as a senior-level attorney. Steve handled contracts and closings for family and friends frequently. He handled the sale of our house in Willingboro. The buyer was also an attorney representing himself. Sitting in our Willingboro living room, the deal was going south. We had reached an impasse. At this point, Steve asked the buyer where he went to law school. Rutgers, said the buyer. Me too, said Steve. Steve asked if he had so-and-so for real estate law. The buyer said yes. Steve then said cleverly, since we had the same instructor, there's no way either of us has an advantage over the other. The deal was signed minutes later. Another time when Steve came to my legal rescue was when I got a speeding ticket in Pittsburgh. In his wisdom, he suggested that the exact words I should use were very important. So when the time came to meet the judge in person, I said, Your Honor, I now understand what I did was wrong. When you consider my regret, please take that into consideration. Well, Steve was right. The judge gave me no points and no fine if I stayed out of her courtroom for a year. Maybe this story gives you an insight into how Steve's career would progress. Steve never talked much about his work to anybody. All I knew was that he did really big deals that involved shopping centers, hotels, housing plans, etc. He saved every piece of paper and made a name for himself as a capable attorney with a remarkable memory who always got the job done. Steve and Sharon shared a love for architecture. Their home was the only home I know that had Architectural Digest as bathroom reading material. Sharon and Steve's Cherry Hill and Florida home included unique lighting, fixtures, flooring, windows, and so much more that you won't find in anyone else's house. This was their passion. The Schwartz, Kravitz, and Green families spent many summers at Long Beach Island, New Jersey. For 2 weeks, Steve would never complain about anything because he hated the sun. You could find him on the beach wrapped in a towel, wearing a hat, and under an umbrella. He especially didn't like the ocean. I always felt he never got past his mother telling him to wait an hour or two before going in the water after eating. This happened to me too. We took big trips with Sharon, Steve, and the kids. The first, actually before kids, was to Martha's Vineyard in July 1969. This turned out to be a weekend of history and infamy. The moon landing and first walk on the moon occurred that weekend, and also the Kennedy incident on Chappaquiddick. We were there. Next, with the kids, we went to Disney World in Florida. However, the most memorable trip we took began at the Hotel Del Coronado in San Diego, California. Steve and Sharon planned a painstakingly detailed route all the way to San Francisco via the Pacific Coast Highway. The plan was to stay at the most prestigious hotels, including the Beverly Hills Hotel and the bed and breakfast near Hearst Castle. On the way, we were able to stay in communication with each of our 2 cars with CB radios. Occasionally, truckers joined us on our frequency with the well-known call, "Breaker, breaker." Along the Pacific Coast Highway, we encountered steep cliffs without guardrails and had to coach Steve through to keep his eyes looking forward. Steve and I shared a love of photography. However, Steve was always hesitant to press the shutter button unless everything was perfect. Bottom line, he didn't take that many pictures. Steve was a great researcher, well before Google and the internet. Much of the detail in Sharon's Eisenberg book was the result of Steve's research. Steve definitely had a comfort zone. Once he got out of it, he enjoyed himself. Around 1969 or 70, I joined a group called Toastmasters International. This was a group to help overcome the fear of public speaking. You would write your own speeches, deliver them to the group, and receive feedback. I remember Steve had the most interesting speeches of anyone, and no one could match his vocabulary. Besides his love of architecture, Steve loved tools. He loved walking through old-fashioned hardware stores and occasionally spent Saturday mornings at Home Depot or Lowe's, walking around or attending an in-house class. Steve and I signed up for a woodworking class at Cherry Hill Adult Education. We both bought radial saws from Sears. and were prepared to make furniture. Never quite worked out that way. But Steve finished his basement and constructed a 2-level deck attached to the house. A huge undertaking. It took him 2 summers to complete this project. Steve was frugal, to say the least. Instead of buying power tools to do the hammering, etc., he did it all by hand. World-class craftsmanship. I understand he enlisted Kenny's help on occasion. This added a few years to complete these projects, but once again, he always got it done. Lots of things changed when our family moved to Pittsburgh in 1981. First was the trip to get there from Cherry Hill. The Pennsylvania Turnpike is treacherous. There's a stretch of road called S-curves that are very, very scary. Steve made the trip many times with white knuckles on the steering wheel most of the trip. When Steve was looking at something, he always knew the history of what it was he was looking at. He was like a tour guide, whether at a museum or a historic site, such as Frank Lloyd Wright's masterpiece, Falling Water. He accumulated all of this knowledge by reading whole books from the library on the train ride from Cherry Hill to Philadelphia his entire working life. Steve loved to eat at a Pittsburgh institution, Eaton Park. When looking through the menu, he discovered liver and onions, an acquired taste, but he loved it regardless of the heartburn it caused. One last adventure we shared. Andy and I visited Steve and Sharon at their new home in Boca Sound, in Broken Sound, Boca. The girls were having a reunion lunch with some of their Phi Sig Drexel sorority sisters. Steve and I were going to have lunch at the Broken Sound Bistro. They had valet parking. I drove, and we had driven to Florida that year in my red Ford Fiesta, a small, compact car, but it had great gas mileage. The lunch was great. After lunch, we stood in line at the valet station to get our car. The valet would call out the car as it arrived for pickup. In a loud voice, you would hear the valet yell, "White Bentley, green Aston Martin, blue Jaguar, brown Range Rover," etc. Finally, as loud as possible, we heard the call for a red Ford Fiesta. Steve and I both laughed so hard as the valet gave us the biggest smile. Steve and I agreed we were more Ford Fiesta guys than Bentley. I think everyone here has Steve Schwartz stories that paint a picture of an extraordinary individual. He enriched the lives of anyone whom he came in contact with, thanks to his delightful sense of humor and kind gestures. Thank you.
Dave and Max, Steve and Sharon's grandkids.
My pop was the best grandpa ever. In my personal opinion, he is in the Hall of Fame for my family. And a couple memories that I have with him are when my pa attends my basketball and soccer games, he was always my biggest cheerleader, and it always made me confident. When my pa was there, another memory that I have is my pa would always play basketball with me. Fun fact, my pa always used to say, "Shoot hot dog shot." Last but not least, my favorite memory of them all. When I got seeds and I planted them, I kept watering them, but it wasn't grown. And out of nowhere, my grandma and pa got me a lemon tree. Pa loved to garden, and in his memory, I will grow the lemon tree, and it will always make me smile and think of him. I will forever remember my pa.
Okay, hold on. My pa was an amazing grandpa. Sorry. I've been like holding in these tears all day.
amazing grandpa. The best one you could ever ask for. He used to take my pigtails and use them as motorcycle handles. And then, wait, hold on. And make motorcycle noises, I've got that. And even he also used to make mustache. That was his favorite when he was a young girl. But he was a jokester in the family. He always made people laugh all the time, and his great smile lit up the room. Ava loved when she used to sleep over at their house and go to the movies. It was just so much fun. And going to the beach in Ocean City, walking on the boardwalk was also such a blast. Pa was a kind and loving, thoughtful person. Ava writes, she could go on and on and on about him. I can't get a word out, so I'm not really sure. In the end, she says, I will love my pa, and he will always be in our hearts no matter what. I love you, pa. I love you.
My father-in-law, or as I affectionately called him, Schwartzy, was such a wonderful and kind person. He was a man of few words, but the words he used made a profound impact on me. I first met Schwartzy when I was 21 years old. He became a second father to me, and I always went to him for advice, whether it was about my career, friendships, family. He always guided me in the best way. As I said, he's a man of few words, and I will refer to these words as Schwartzyisms. With all due respect. There were many times I would talk with him and we would have conversations about life. And when Schwartzy did not agree with me on some things, he would say, Cher, with all due respect, but that's not how I see it. Be that as it may. When I would go to him about something I would get upset about, he would always play devil's advocate and say, be that as it may. He always liked to look at both sides of the argument, and I guess that was the lawyer in him. Time will tell. As a Jewish mother, we always worry. I would talk to him and tell him about my worries. He would never worry too much. He lived in the present a lot. I think it's because he knew when to worry and when not to worry. And he would always say, Cher, time will tell. Do your best. Schwartzy was the hardest worker I knew. He got up at 4 a.m. to go to work, and it was his purpose and pleasure in life. He prided himself on that and always said that everything will work out if you do your best. Education is key. Steve and Sharon always believed in education. When it was time for Ava to go to pre-K, they wanted her to have the best foundation in education to help her succeed and Max succeed in life. She and Max went to Friends Select, a private school based on Quaker values. Those values were very much in sync with our Jewish values of taking care of one another, creating an inclusive community, and giving back to the world to make it a better place. I will forever be grateful for the experience both of our children received because of Sharon and Steve's support. Don't get soft. What does that mean, you ask? If you knew Schwartzy, he had a work ethic like no other. He had a hard time relaxing. He would say to me, Cher, don't get soft because when you do, things start falling apart. I guess that started to happen a little bit for Schwartzy. He retired. His purpose in life was work, but he could no longer do it, and he had a little bit of a harder time navigating life, and there was a bit of a hole there when there was no work. He did read a lot. He loved spending time with the kids and gardening, but it definitely made him a little soft. I guess that's when things started to fall apart a little bit. Early onset dementia started. But he got to enjoy life for 5 years, and I know this was nice for him as well. He would say, Cher, what time of the day is it? Like, actually, who cares what time of the day it is, or what time, or the day of the week? I have no more work. I'm enjoying life. And he had the biggest smile on his face, and it made me smile ear to ear. Family is everything. Steve loved his family more than anything. He did everything for us, and he enjoyed our time together. Whether it was on the deck on a Sunday in Cherry Hill grilling, at one of Ava and Max's sports games, or the annual Hanukkah party, it gave him great joy to be with the family. When Steve and Sharon became snowbirds and go to Florida, I know he greatly missed the children, and he wanted to be with us. When we found out Schwartzy had been diagnosed with the onset early dementia, Kenny and I decided, along with other factors, that it would be the best to be by his father's side in Florida, and I agreed. I told Schwartzy that I would talk to my boss about working remotely, because as the same for Schwartzy, my work is a big part of my life. I'll never forget when I met with my boss and she said it could be a possibility. And I remember going back to the house in Cherry Hill, sitting on that deck, sunny day, and the joy in Schwartzy's eyes when I told him. He was so happy. He lifted his fist up in the air and said, "Yeah!" And if you knew Schwartzy well, you knew he didn't get too excited about things. He was very even keel. He was an 8 out of 10 every single day. I am forever grateful for the opportunity we had with him this past year and a half. It was such a wonderful time, and I will cherish it forever. And lastly, move forward. Last Thursday, when I knew they would be putting a feeding tube in on Friday, I looked at my afternoon work schedule and thought I could go over during lunch and spend some time with him. Schwartzy and I talked for a while. I was feeling hopeful as we had planned on him checking out of the hospital on Monday and finally coming home after 6 weeks of being in rehab and in and out of the hospital. I said, "Schwartzy, you'll be coming home soon." And he thought about it, as he does a lot of times when he doesn't agree with me. And he said, "Sharon moves forward." I said, "What?" He said, "Move forward." I said, "I will never leave you." "Well, Schwartzy, I will take your advice, as I always have, and move forward. But with that, I will always be thinking of you and your Schwartzyisms that will help us all get through life. Kenny and the kids and I will miss you so much, and we will move forward."
Mensch, a person of integrity and honor. In true Kenny fashion, when I started on this speech this morning, I began by trying to come up with some thoughts or words that could really help describe my dad. My first thoughts: should I jot some notes down? Should I come up with an outline? Or should I make a list? Well, if you know my dad, you know the only answer is to make a list. So I made a list. However, the only way I knew how, and the one that worked for the work, and the one that would drive my dad crazy, I made one in my head. It's not in a list if it's not written down. But all of a sudden, the words and thoughts started to flood my head. But one word stood out the most, and that is the word mensch. And if you only knew one characteristic about my dad, I bet you that would be the one. I truly cannot believe we're here today and this moment is upon us. I know out of all people, my dad would be pretty upset himself, but for a different reason. He would not wish to be the center of attention and see that everybody was making a big fuss about him. But lastly, and most importantly, how dare everyone in this room miss a day at work to attend his funeral? He would always joke with me as a teenager When I would express my frustration in life, I would say things like, I just want to die, or I just can't handle high school and want it to end. His reply, always and forever, would be, KK, don't die. I have too much going on at the office, and I have no time for a funeral. Well, Dad, you got me on this one. My dad, Steven Schwartz, was born in the Bronx, New York. He grew up in Dumont, New Jersey, with his sisters Marilyn and Norma, and my grandparents, Milton and Pauline. From the stories of the family history, my grandparents lived a modest lifestyle that was based around the foundations of hard work, love for your family, and an appreciation for ice cream and milkshakes. My dad was the oldest of the family who always looked out for his parents and sisters. Schwartzy formed his legendary work ethic from an early childhood working in his father's ice cream store to enduring 6 years of Latin in high school and college, and then completing his law degree. Speaking of college, I would say the highlight of my dad's college life was the day he was set up on a blind date with a young, smart perfectionist from the Rutgers, Edison area. Wow, 52 years of marriage later, their love at the end was as strong as it was on the first day they met. Schwartzy meant a lot to each of us and all of us. He was a friend, an uncle, an advisor, a sounding board, a lawyer, a mensch, a husband, a pa, but most importantly to me, he was my dad. I'm the lucky one to be raised by someone with such high moral character, amazing work ethic, and an undying devotion to his wife and family. He has taught me more than words could ever express, because in my dad's eyes, actions always speak louder than words. He did not just set an example, excuse my language, he set the effing bar. One of my dad's favorite and sick jokes that he told me since I was a young kid, hold on, I was switched at birth and my real parents are still out there. I have to be honest, it was a little weird at first, but after a while, it kind of just stuck. However, the thought every once in a while did cross my mind, and I would start comparing myself to my dad. How come I am so good at math and not English, and can't write a 5-paragraph essay when my dad could come home and talk about a deal that was worth $4 billion and 45 pages long? How come my dad wouldn't go to the Sixers game with me with front row seats, but rather stay home and read a book about Frank Lloyd Wright's Falling Waterhouse? The list could go on and on with many funny opposites of our personalities, but one day I stopped focusing on it. I didn't care anymore. I just realized this is my dad's humor. But more importantly, it gave me a chance to figure out how I am like him and what I can strive to be. A few words and thoughts popped in my head instantly. Kind, giving, selfless, loyal, hardest worker in the room, pa, dad, and husband. As well, I'm going to kind of throw off a little speech. I didn't get a chance to write it, but I know I've told each of the cousins individually. I know how much you love all your kids, like all the cousins' kids. You treat them like they were his own grandkids. I know how much you just enjoy all the grandkids and grandnephews and nieces, and that is definitely one of his pride and joy as he got older. So, in Schwartzy's honor, it'd only be fitting to read about 6 to 8 more pages of his speech, and I don't think it's necessary. Words cannot express our love and gratitude for everything he has provided our family. We will honor your legacy of late hours at the office, manicured lawn and hedges, only buying clothes without logos, and not paying for overpriced Nikes no matter how much your son yells and screams. Sorry, I had to throw a little sarcasm in there. Maybe not my dad's style, but he knows I had to do it a little KK style. In all seriousness, today is a celebration of an amazing man, friend, son, husband, pa, and father. In his honor, I think we should all try to do the right thing, work hard, squeeze a little tush, and most importantly, Ava, what does pa always tell me? Always smile. I will miss you and love you forever, your KK.
Shadows falling and I'm running out of breath. Keep me in your heart for a while. If I leave you, it doesn't mean I love you any less. Keep me in your heart for a while. When you get up in the morning and you see that crazy sun, keep me in your heart for a while. There's a train leaving nightly called When All Is Said and Done. Keep me in your heart for a while. Sha-la-la-la-la-la-la-la-la-la. Keep me in your heart for a while. Sha-la-la-la-la-la-la-la-la. Keep me in your heart for a while. Sometimes when you're doing simple things around the house, maybe you'll think of me and smile. You know I'm tied to you like the buttons on your blouse. Keep me in your heart for a while. Hold me in your thoughts, take me to your dreams, touch me as I fall into view. When the winter comes, keep the fires lit, and I will be right next to you. Engine drivers headed north to Pleasant Stream, keep me in your heart for a while. These wheels keep turning, but they're running out of steam. Keep me in your heart for a while. Sha-la-la-la-la-la-la-la-la-la. Keep me in your heart for a while. Sha-la-la-la-la-la-la-la-la. Keep me in your heart for a while. Keep me in your heart. our rabbis taught that there are 3 crowns: the crown of Torah, the crown of priesthood, and the crown of royalty. But they emphasized that the crown of a good name excels them all. The book of Ecclesiastes says, Tov Shem Mishemen Tov. A good name is to be treasured above precious oil. Wealth, health, even life passes away, but a good name lives forever. It is this view that the Talmud teaches. Monuments need not be erected for the righteous. Their deeds are their memorials. They will be remembered and revered for the kindness they have shown and for the love they have given. They are shining examples of what it means to be a mensch. We rise for the memorial chant, the Omar Rachamim. שוכן במרומים, המצא מנוחה נכונה, תחת כנפי השכינה, עם קדושים וטהורים, כזור הרקיע מסעירים, את נשמת שלמה הרש שהלך לעולמו, בעל הרחמים יסתירהו בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו, ינוח בשלום על משכבו, ונאמר Amen. Fully compassionate God on high, to our loved one, Steve, who has entered eternity, grant him clear and certain rest with you in the lofty heights of the sacred and pure, whose brightness shines like the very glow of heaven. Source of mercy, forever enfold him in the embrace of your wings. Secure his soul in eternity. Adonai, he is yours. May he rest in peace, and together we say, Amen. Amen. You may be seated. Interment will follow our chapel service this afternoon at Crescent Cemetery in Pennsauken. Following interment, the family will be gathering at Congregation Makor Shalom in Cherry Hill for the meal of consolation.
Will the pallbearers please step to the center aisle? And I'll ask if we can rise once more, please.